Hey guys, tonight we slide back in time into muddy boots and tin helmets as we wander through one of the less glamorous yet strangely fascinating aspects of World War II, what soldiers actually ate. You're in the field now, crouched behind a rock, rain dribbling down the back of your neck, and it's finally time for a break. You open your ration kit like it's a Christmas present, and you find a can of something beige. Welcome to the dinner table of the 1940s soldier, where powdered eggs, instant coffee, and a slab of greasy meat product called Spam are the highlights of your day. You probably won't survive this meal, honestly. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's just so deeply uninspired. Still, it's food. Technically, so comma. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when people are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit cross-legged on your rucksack, flipping open your standard-issue K-ration. The box feels lighter than you'd like, especially after a 10-mile hike through sticky mud and echoing artillery. Inside, a small can of pork loaf. It's pink, it's square, it jiggles. 4 crackers, tough enough to file your dog tags on, and a packet of powdered eggs that smell faintly of warm chalk. You're not alone in this culinary trial. American GIs were famously powered by a trio of field meals: K rations for short-term operations, C rations for the long haul, and A rations, if you were lucky enough to be near a field kitchen and not getting shelled. The K ration, designed by physiologist Ansel Keys, yes, the same guy who later gave us the Mediterranean diet, go figure, was meant to sustain troops on the move. You tear open the little envelope of instant coffee, tap the powder into your tin mug, and add water from your canteen. It's lukewarm, bitter, and somehow gritty, like someone strained it through a sock that saw combat. But you sip anyway, because caffeine is the closest thing to a hug out here. Thing beige. Welcome to the dinner table of the 1940s. Historians still argue whether the K ration was ever truly intended as a long-term solution or just a temporary fix. Some say Keys wanted it used for only a couple of days. Others think the logistics just ran away with the plan. Either way, you're now on day 6 of chewing on what feels like flavor-enhanced drywall. It's just so deeply uninspired. But there's a silver lining. A tiny foil-wrapped cube labeled chewing gum. You pop it in your mouth and feel a fleeting moment of joy until it loses its flavor in under a minute and begins to disintegrate like ancient papyrus. Still, it's a ritual now. Coffee, meat, your buddy across the fire gestures with his spork, swearing that if he eats one more can of meat product that jiggles, he's going to start identifying as a vegetarian. You both laugh, dryly, of course, and returned to poking at your eggs. They were scrambled once in a distant dimension. Now they resemble yellow spackle with the texture of a rubber boot. You can almost imagine a USDA inspector somewhere nodding solemnly, declaring, "Yeah, on occasion you get the Holy Grail," a tin of fruit cocktail, a syrupy miracle that tastes like hope and pears and whatever color maraschino cherries are. You savor each sticky cube like a king, ignoring the fact that it's probably older than your boots. In fact, some soldiers hoarded their fruit tins, not for nutrition, but for morale. A sweet spoonful on a rainy night could briefly cancel out the misery. You sit cross-legged on your rucksack, flipping open your standard-issue K-ration. The box feels lighter than you'd want. Quirky? Here's a tidbit. Some rations included a small sheet of toilet paper, just a few squares, enough to insult your dignity, but not clean up after it. You joke that it's probably there to be used before the meal, not after. Smell faintly of warm chalk. You're not alone in this culinary trial. Some guys, especially in the Pacific Theater, carry hot sauce or mustard packets pilfered from care packages or friendly locals. Anything to drown the taste of Spam, the reigning champion of mystery meat. Introduced during WW2 as a cheap, shelf-stable protein, Spam became so iconic that American troops practically spammed the globe with it. Hawaii, the Philippines, and Korea still have culinary love-hate relationships with the stuff. Even stranger, certain rations contained processed cheese spread, which came in tiny tins with an opener key. The texture was like paste, the color suspiciously neon. It didn't melt, didn't spoil, and probably didn't come from a cow. Yet, somehow, it became a minor obsession. Soldiers would trade cigarettes for extra tins. Others used the empty containers as makeshift stoves or cups, or mini-stoves and cups, depending. Historians still debate how well Mesopotamian irrigation actually worked. It seems there were constant struggles to balance the water flow. Too much, and you'd drown your crops. Too little, and, well, goodbye barley. You feel sympathy for the poor soul trying to dig a new canal with what appears to be a slightly sharp stick. Ah, but there's a silver lining. A tiny foil wrap. Your stomach grumbles, not out of hunger, but confusion. It's not that the food is bad exactly. It's that it tries so hard to be food and ends up somewhere between edible and evidence. You look down at the last slice of pork product, now glistening with ambient air sadness, and eat it anyway. Of meat product that jiggles, he's going to start identifying as a vegetarian. You both laugh, dryly of course, and return to. You lean back against your gear, letting the rain ping softly against your helmet. The meal is done. The world is quiet. And somewhere, someone is making real scrambled eggs with butter. The thought is more nourishing than anything you just ate. A syrupy miracle that tastes like hope and pears and whatever color maraschino cherries are. You wake up stiff, cold, and mildly offended by your own breath. Your foxhole smells like damp wool and regret, and your stomach's already hinting that it would really like something warm, preferably edible. Possibly, a steaming ladle of something lands in your mess tin with a splat. It wiggles. It's brown. Your buddy squints and says, "That used to be stew." You take a whiff and decide not to ask any follow-up questions. Toilet paper. Just a few squares. Enough to insult your dignity, but not clean up after it. You joke that it's probably there to be used before the meal, not after. Smell faintly of warm chalk. Welcome to Trench Toast and Mystery Stew, two cornerstones of field cuisine that somehow endured multiple wars and none of your digestive system's standards. You're in Europe now, somewhere cold and bleak and with just enough shellfire in the distance to make you jump when a spoon clangs. Taste of Spam, the reigning champion of mystery meat. Introduced during WW2 as a cheap, shelf-stable protein, Spam became so iconic that American troops practically spammed the globe with it. Hawaii, the Philippines, and Korea, you walk toward a construction site where ropes creak, dust flies, and a foreman is yelling at someone for chiseling the eye of Horus upside down. There's a deep hum of human effort, synchronized and steady. But even here, surrounded by monumental ambition, someone's off in a shady corner sketching a cat for no discernible reason. You nod approvingly. Ancient priorities. Still, you dunk it in the stew, letting it soak until it's mushy enough not to chip a tooth. The stew, if you're feeling generous, contains meat, maybe beef, possibly rabbit, or, according to one rumor circulating in your unit, horse. Historians still argue whether battlefield meat sources were more pragmatic than official records let on. You eat anyway. Hunger makes pragmatists of everyone. The stew also contains some vegetables, or what's left of them. There's a potato chunk that looks like it traveled from 1917, a slice of carrot that's more orange adjacent than orange, and something green that you poke 3 times before deciding it's probably cabbage. Maybe, could be a sock. Eat it anyway. Field kitchens tried their best. Often nothing more than a trailer or a tent with a huge metal stove. These mobile canteens ran on condensed ingredients and hope. Water. Meat. A few root vegetables, salt, and a spice packet the size of a thimble. Sometimes, meals came from tins opened hours in advance. Other times, cooks tossed whatever they had in as you sip the lukewarm broth. Someone behind you jokes that at least it's not British rations. They've got something called pea soup with ham flavoring, though the ham is more of a haunting than an ingredient. Another guy from down the line says the Canadians have maple-flavored sausage mush, which sounds like it should be good but isn't. That it would really like something more quirky detail time. During a particularly weird winter in Italy, one American unit discovered a cache of old Roman amphorae buried beneath their camp, and some genius decided to cook stew in them for luck. The result? A weirdly chalky, vaguely ancient-tasting mess that gave half them. You finish your meal and wipe your tin out with a crust of bread. Dishwashing isn't really an option when you're mobile, and every soldier becomes part raccoon after a while, always foraging for something cleanish to eat with. Welcome to Trench Toast and Mystery Stew, two cornerstones of field cuisine that somehow endured multiple wars and none of your digestive system's standards. You're in Europe now, somewhere cold and bleak and with just enough shellfire in the distance to make you jump when a spoon clanks. Someone pulls out a ration biscuit that they've been saving for a bad day, which this clearly is. It's beige. It's dry. It comes with a single pat of congealed butter wrapped in wax paper. You share it anyway, breaking the biscuit into tiny, dusty chunks like it's the Eucharist of mediocrity. Action site, where ropes creak, dust flies, and a foreman is yelling at someone. You drink water from your canteen. It's metallic tasting and barely above freezing, but hydration is sacred, even if the water tablets make it taste like a swimming pool. One guy uses his water ration to make field coffee, essentially hot water, with a few stray granules of instant stirred in. He sips it like a connoisseur and insists it tastes better when you cry a little. Around you, soldiers trade bites and barbs. This stew's got the texture of a wet sponge, someone mutters. Better than last week's potato surprise, another replies. That surprise was diarrhea, the first guy deadpans. You laugh, but softly. It's all part of the routine now. Get on. Once you eat anyway. Hunger mess tins get stacked, and someone starts burning the trash. Paper, food scraps, maybe a few unlucky socks. You rub your hands over the flames, letting the warmth seep into your fingers. You can still taste the meal, but just barely. It's not the flavor that sticks, it's the ritual. You'll eat the same thing tomorrow, and the next day. There's talk of a holiday dinner. Christmas, maybe. A few crates of real turkey, cranberry jelly, even pie, if the logistics gods smile. One guy's already started composing letters to home describing the feast in great, totally exaggerated detail. I'm gonna say I had steak and 2 types of gravy, he says. You lean back, foolish and tired, staring at the pale, cloudy sky. A cold breeze runs down your collar like a wet finger. A few feet away, someone's humming. The sound mixes with the soft clink of metal cups and the rustling of tarps. This life, mud, metal, mystery stew, isn't what you signed up for, but it's yours now. Every bite of food, you lie down again in your foxhole. Somewhere behind your eyelids, the stew still simmers, and your brain tries to decide whether you're comforted or confused. Probably both dot you. Wake to a quiet crunch, not enemy fire, thankfully. Just frost hardening the edges of your blanket and biting at your boots. You wiggle your toes to make sure they're still there. They are. The agora is buzzing. Fruit vendors, fishmongers, and philosophers all jostle for space under striped awnings. You dodge a man selling olives by volume and another pushing scrolls that promise 7 habits of highly reflective citizens. You think it's a joke, but he insists it's endorsed by Plato. Zine that somehow endured multiple wars and one mainstream fact. Ancient Greece invented democracy, but let's not get too excited. It mostly applied to adult males with land. C rations were supposed to be an upgrade from K rations. More variety, more calories, more meat-adjacent items. But in the brutal winter of 1944, they might as well have issued ice cubes and a hug. The can barely warms in your hands, even after you try holding it near the tiny flame of a heating tablet. The air is so cold that your breath freezes mid-sigh. Canteen. It's metallic tasting and barely above freezing. Historians still argue whether the Allied High Command underestimated the toll of winter logistics, or if the chaos of the German offensive simply overran even the best-laid chow lines. Whatever the truth, all you know is that your fingers are stiff, your lips are cracked, and your beans are only slightly less frozen than your boots. Soldiers trade bites and barbs. This stew's got the texture of a wet sponge, someone mutters. Better than last week's potato soup, and yet somehow, they taste fine. Maybe it's the hunger. Or maybe your standards have eroded to, is it not actively hurting me? Either way, you finish the can and wipe your hands on your jacket. No napkins in the Ardennes. Paper, food scraps, maybe a few unlucky socks. You rub your hands over the flame. The play ends with everyone either married or dead, which seems to be the general rule, and you slip away toward the coast. There's a breeze now. You follow it, sandals slapping against the marble steps, until you reach the shoreline where ships bob lazily, their sails furled like sleeping birds. High, if the logistics gods smile. There were 3 meals in a standard sea ration pack: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Each came in olive drab tins labeled with military precision and zero charm. Meat and beans, ham and lima beans, chopped ham and eggs. You remember the first time you saw ham and lima beans, how optimistic you were? Now, it's known among troops as ham and mother redacted beans. A meal so reviled but cold as it is, some still try to elevate the experience. One guy carries a tiny bottle of Tabasco from a home package. Another collects melted snow in a helmet to make weak tea. Someone tried to warm beans by sticking the can under their armpit. He was committed, but not successful. Not enemy fire, thankfully. Just frost hardening the edges of You hear a rumor from down the line about a unit that cooked over engine blocks. They'd pop the hood of a Jeep, place a can right on the hot metal, and let the machine do the work. Desperate times call for creative thermodynamics. Another story claims a tank crew once fried eggs on the armor plating. No one knows where they got the eggs, possibly sorcery. Insists it's endorsed by Plato. Quirky moment incoming. One GI claimed he cracked a can of pork and eggs that had somehow fermented, giving it a weirdly fizzy texture. He dared his buddy to eat it for a pack of Lucky Strikes. The buddy did, then spent 3 days in a field hospital, with what the medic described as culinary betrayal. The cold isn't just uncomfortable, it changes everything. Your rations freeze solid. The tin won't open unless heated or stabbed. Chocolate bars become brick-like hazards. Even your crackers shatter like glass when dropped. Somehow, the Germans are eating sauerkraut. You find an abandoned mess area after a skirmish and discover tins of actual cooked cabbage, still warm from a fire someone had to leave in a hurry. You and your squad share the loot like pirates, marveling at the tangy, sour taste of actual flavor. All you know is that your fingers are stiff, your lips are cracked, and your beans are only slightly less frozen than your boots. Soldiers' food becomes the measure of civilization. Warmth becomes an act of defiance. A hot meal, even just once a week, is enough to make you feel human again. So you cling to those tiny moments. A half-melted chocolate bar, a cup of broth, a heated can of meat stew eaten cross-legged on the snow like some weird holiday dinner with 10 of your closest half-frozen friends. And still, someone cracks a joke. "Hey," says a voice from behind a snow-covered log. "You think they'll serve turkey if we take Berlin by Christmas?" And you slip away toward the coast. There's a breeze now. You follow it, sandals slapping against the marble steps, until you reach the shoreline where ships bob lazily, their sails furled like sleeping birds. High, if the logistics gods smile. One guy's already started to compose. There were 3 meals, and you all laugh. Not because it's likely, but because it's better than crying into your beanstalk. By now, your body is adjusting. Your stomach has given up expecting flavor. Your brain stops questioning textures. And your heart clings to the idea that somewhere beyond you crawl back into your hole in the earth, can now empty and serving as an improvised candle holder. The small flicker glows just enough to see your breath. Tomorrow will bring more snow, more marching, more mystery meat. But tonight, you're full, kind of, and weirdly comforted by the shared suffering. Your boots squelch through something that's either a puddle or someone's failed attempt at a soup. You don't want to know. The war has shifted again. You're not freezing anymore, but you're not warm either. Just stuck in that damp, lukewarm purgatory where everything smells like mildew and your socks will never dry. Place a can right on the hot metal and let the machine do the... It's noon, or close enough, and your stomach starts sending increasingly dramatic hunger signals. The kind that whisper, surely it's time for steak by now, but you know better. You open your pack and find your lunch, a K-ration lunch unit, wrapped in waxed cardboard like a sad Christmas present. Inside, a tin of processed cheese spread, 4 rock-solid crackers, a fruit bar that looks like compressed raisins revenge, a small pack of chewing gum, and, glory be, a tiny packet of instant coffee. It's like a gift basket curated by someone who's never eaten food. But still, you open each item like it's treasure. The tin won't open unless heated or stabbed. Chocolate bars become... The cheese spread comes in a round can, and if you squint, it almost resembles food. You jab a hole in it with your knife and try to squeeze some out onto a cracker. It moves with the enthusiasm of industrial glue, but eventually it succumbs. You take a bite. It's salty. Very salty. The K-ration was supposed to be portable, calorie-packed, and morale-sustaining. It was meant for short-term field use. But, like that one party guest who never leaves, it overstayed its welcome. Soldiers carried K-rations through long campaigns, and by the 5th day of cheese and crackers, they weren't just tired, they were betrayed. A hot meal, even just once a week, is enough to make you chew slowly. The crackers flake like dry plaster, and the cheese tries to escape. You glance over at your buddy who's trying to rehydrate the fruit bar with spit. Gotta make it edible somehow, he says, grimacing. You nod in solidarity. Hydration and desperation. Nature's seasoning. Behind a snow-covered log. You think they'll serve turkey if we take Berlin by Christmas? And you slip away toward the coast. Still, you're grateful. There's food. There's gum. There's even a tiny beige rectangle labeled cigarettes. You don't smoke, but you trade it to another guy for his chocolate bar. It's the economy of the field. Everything has value, especially sugar and caffeine. A man once swapped his entire K-ration for 1 can of peaches. Worth it, he said, licking the juice from his fingers. Flavor. Your brain stops questioning textures, and your heart clings to the idea that quirky detail time. There's a persistent rumor that a unit in the Pacific once received an entire shipment of K-rations that had been stored next to crates of soap. Everything tasted faintly of lavender and despair. One soldier allegedly began hallucinating, but back to your lunch. The gum is spearmint. Hard at first, but merciful after a few chews. It cuts through the taste of tinned cheese and reminds you briefly of home. A diner in Indiana. A drive-in burger joint in California. A bagged lunch your mom packed when you were 10. All of it feels 1,000 miles. You sip water from your canteen, then prep the instant coffee. The packet reads, Type 1, soluble. You pour the brown dust into your canteen cup, add tepid water from a heated mess tin, and stir it with a twig. The result is convincing. It smells like coffee. It's slightly bitter. K-rations came in 3 types: breakfast, lunch, and supper, and each had different contents, though the cheese and cracker combo was tragically common. The breakfast unit usually offered canned meat or eggs, a fruit bar, a packet of powdered lemonade, why, and a chunk of compressed cereal. The cereal was as dense as ambition and slightly less. You remember one guy who actually liked the K-rations. Efficient, he called them. No nonsense. He also once tried to heat his cheese spread with a magnifying glass and spent an hour chasing sunlight. So, maybe not your go-to food. And then there's the meat. Every few meals you get a tin of something vaguely meaty. Chopped ham and eggs, deviled ham, or the notorious meat product. They all come in the same color, canned tan. Texture varies from gelatinous to chalky. Taste ranges from bland to betrayed by science. Overstate its welcome. Soldiers carried K-rash. The village is still waking. A rooster crows in the distance. Naturally, you step outside into morning fog and the kind of mud that seems determined to become a permanent part of your boots. Children chase geese through narrow lanes. An old woman shakes out herbs from a window and throws an onion at a passing rat. You feel strangely at home. The fruit bar with spit. Gotta make it edible somehow, he said. Now, imagine this. You're sitting under a rain-drenched tarp, chewing meat paste from a spoon, rainwater running down your back, and all you can think is, man, I miss real food. A burger, eggs, warm toast. Anything that doesn't come in a can and require a P38 can opener. The tiny key-shaped tool every soldier clung to. You wrap up your K-ration meal by folding the cardboard box back into your pack. Trash isn't just trash out here. It's weight. You carry it until the next burn pit or field dump, because nothing says war like rationing. Not just food, but garbage disposal. But here's the weird thing. You get used to it. The crackers, the paste, the gum. You even start developing preferences. Some guys hoard the canned cheese like it's gold. Others will fight you for the chocolate D-bar, even though it tastes like cocoa-flavored soap. Thing tasted faintly of lavender and despair. One soldier allegedly began hallucinating bubble. But back to your lunch. The gum is spearmint. You lean back against your gear, foolish again. The taste of industrial dairy still coating your tongue. A guy nearby is humming something. Sounds like Glenn Miller, or maybe it's just hunger hallucinations. You close your eyes for a second, letting the dull ache of marching settle into your bones. Lunch is over. War resumes. You're somewhere in Italy now. Your uniform stained with the dust of ancient roads and olive groves that somehow keep growing despite the shell fire. The sun is relentless. It's not the warm, cozy sun you dream of back home, but the kind that bakes your helmet, melts your chocolate, and turns your canteen into a sad thermos of bath water. Hence, though the cheese and cracker combo was tragically common. The breakfast unit usually offered canned meat or eggs, a fruit bar, a packet of powdered lemonade, why, and a chunk of compressed cereal. The cereal was as dense as today's treat is an A ration, or so you've been told. You raise an eyebrow because you're still in a combat zone, and A rations are supposed to be real food, prepared by real cooks using fresh ingredients in actual kitchens. What you've got, however, is a steaming aluminum tray handed to you from the back of a converted truck. It smells edible. You shuffle forward in line, mess kit in hand, watching the cook slop ladles of thick brown stew into trays. There's bread, too, actual bread, softish and warm from the heat lamp. It's the first slice you've seen that didn't come vacuum sealed in despair. A miracle. The guy behind you whispered. By midday, the sun breaks through the clouds, and the village market buzzes to life. You stroll past stalls selling honey cakes, embroidered linens, dried fish, and mysterious herbal tonics that promise to cure melancholy and too much bile. You consider buying a woolen hat shaped like a rooster, but think better of it. Barely. A rations are the holy grail of soldier meals. They mean the supply line is working. They mean you're close enough to something resembling a kitchen. They mean that, for a short, glorious window, the military system is capable of serving food that doesn't require a crowbar to open. Warm toast. Anything that doesn't come in a can and require a P30 rations vary depending on what the quartermasters can scrape together. In the Pacific, it might be fried rice or fish. In Europe, expect things like scrambled eggs, spaghetti with meat sauce, or the fabled roast beef. Once, in a French village, your unit stumbled upon a mobile field kitchen that was serving pork chops with real mashed potato. Quirky footnote. Some units created unofficial menus, giving the meals code names or colorful nicknames. A particularly gray version of sausage and sauerkraut became known as trench worms. Meatloaf with gravy, ammo cake. You once had something called victory hash, which looked like the aftermath of a grenade and tasted like salt's angrier. You tear into the bread. It's slightly stale, but gloriously chewy. Someone nearby pulls out a jar of jam, a care package from home, and spreads it on a hunk of crust. He offers you a bite. You say yes, obviously. It's strawberry, sweet and sticky, a taste that almost brings tears to your eyes. You finish the meal with a small can of peaches, served chilled over crushed ice from the medic's cooler. How? You don't ask. Probably smuggled. Definitely rationed, but incredibly real. You savor each slice, letting the juice drip down your chin like you're at a 4th of July picnic instead. A rations aren't just meals. They're events. They require logistics, roads, trucks, fuel, planning, and, most elusive of all, time. You don't always get them. When you do, you eat with reverence, like each spoonful might be your last, because it might. Why? And a chunk of compressed cereal. The cereal was as dense as historians still argue whether the military invested enough in morale food. Those hot, fresh meals that kept soldiers from unraveling completely. Some say the effort was heroic. Others claim it was sporadic at best, more about optics than nutrition. You don't know. You just know that hot stew tastes like hope. It smells edible. You don't ask too. You shuffle forward in line, mess kit in hand. One guy in your unit claims his uncle worked at a base kitchen and sent him a recipe for the official Army meatloaf. It involves 6 pounds of ground beef, a loaf of stale bread, and 3 pounds of ketchup. Another swears he bribed a cook once to make pancakes using flour smuggled from a French bakery. "Best war crime I ever committed," he says, laughing. Honey cakes, embroidered linens, dried fish, and mysterious herbal tonics that promise to cure melancholy and too much bile. You consider buying a woolen hat shaped like a rooster, but think better of it. Barely. A rations are the holy grail of soldier meals. They mean another moment of oddity. Someone once swapped their A ration dessert, chocolate pudding, for a pair of socks. The logic: you can't eat pudding if your feet fall off from trench foot. Fair enough. Anything that doesn't come in a can and require a P-38A rations vary depending on what the quartermasters can scrape together. In the Pacific, it might sometimes you eat standing. Sometimes you sit in the dirt. Sometimes a local villager offers you a seat at their rickety table, complete with a bottle of something strong and a bowl of homemade pasta. You accept every time, because food is universal, and the war hasn't taken everything from everyone. Not yet. Names. After meals, you clean your mess kit with sand and a splash of water. No sponges, no soap, just a quick scrape and wipe. Then back into your bag. You pack up your gear, feeling slightly more human, slightly less starved, slightly more ready to trudge on through another dust. Someone singing again. It's always the same guy. Today it's "Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree." He's off key, but no one tells him to stop. Because when your belly's full, at least partly, you can afford to let a little music in. You finish, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you start to imagine what a post-war dinner might look like. No mess kits, no lines, no powdered anything. Just a plate, a fork, and maybe, if you're lucky, a slice of apple pie that wasn't canned in 1942. Aren't just meals. They're events. They require logistics, roads, trucks, fuel, planning. You don't dare say it out loud, but you think it. Food this good must mean something. That the end isn't so far away. That maybe tomorrow's meal will taste even better. Maybe dot your boots crunch on something frozen. Again. Gravel, ice, a mix of the two. The cold has teeth now, gnawing at your ankles, fingers, even your nose, which is leaking like it missed the memo that dignity still matters. You're in the Ardennes. Winter. It's foxhole weather. The kind where you sleep in shifts, wrapped in every piece of clothing you own, while snow sneaks in through every gap and crack in your shelter. And when morning comes, you're not woken by birdsong or sunshine, but by your stomach, which is now organizing protests in your rib cage. To the base kitchen, and sent him a recipe for the official Army meatloaf. You rummage through your pack for a ration, likely a C ration this time. No A rations out here. The field kitchen is long gone, probably stuck behind an icy ridge or abandoned after yet another retreat. You unwrap the familiar dull green C rations are technically cooked, canned, and ready to eat. Technically. The reality is a can that refuses to open in the cold, a meal that tastes like it lost a bet, and a spoon so cold it tries to weld itself to your tongue. You use your P-38 can opener, nicknamed the John Wayne because only he could make it look easy, and pry the lid open. Inside is a beige-orange stew of beans, sausage slices, and despair. You scoop it out, one frozen bite at a time. It's better when hot, but there's no fire allowed. Not here. Smoke, the worst part? The fat congeals. It forms this gelatinous layer that stares back at you like it knows you're going to eat it anyway. You try to psych yourself up. Protein, you whisper, stabbing at it with a spoon like it might get up and leave. But you eat it because there's nothing else. Sea rations came in 12 menu items, rotated like a cruel lottery. Some were tolerable: spaghetti with meat, ham and lima beans, aka ham and mothers, even chopped ham and eggs, if you held your nose. But the worst, the scrambled eggs. Quirky side fact: some soldiers figured out you could place an unopened can of beans under your armpit for 20 minutes to warm it. Others tried to strap cans to tank engines, or rest them inside helmets left near exhaust vents. Anything to avoid eating food colder than your morale. Apple tree. He's off key, but no one tells him to stop. Because when your belly's full, at least partly, you can afford to let a little music in. Actual, you finish. Alongside the entree tin came the accessory packet. This included toilet paper, a postage stamp-sized sheet of optimism, chewing gum, cigarettes, matches, sugar, salt, and sometimes, just sometimes, a chocolate disc. That disc was gold, even if it tasted like candle wax with a cocoa complex. You remember once trading your entire sea ration for someone's fruit cocktail tin. It had real cherries. You almost cried. Then again, the fruit cocktail often came with a film of metallic aftertaste, like it had been preserved with spite. Frozen. Again. Gravel, ice, a mix. Sea rations were designed for combat zones. No fire, no preparation, just open and eat. But the calorie count didn't always match the physical demand. Marching through knee-deep snow burns more than a can of beans can give. So you ration your energy, your steps, even your thoughts. Thinking too hard uses warmth. Not woken by birdsong or sunshine, but by your stomach, which is now organizing protests in your rib cage, to the base kitchen, and sent him a recipe for the official Army meatloaf. Few appointments were juggled, guests matched by rank and price. The Hoiran, the elite among courtesans, could command the most elaborate rituals. Her evening began not at the brothel, but at a nearby Hikitjaya, or tea house liaison, where the client waited nervously, checking his coin purse again and again. The reality is a can that refuses to open in the cold, a meal that tastes like it lost a bet, and a spoon so cold it tries to weld itself to your tongue. You use your P38. Sometimes you and the guys would try to get creative. Mix crackers into the beans. Heat the can on a warm rifle barrel. Add powdered coffee to the chocolate bar and pretend it's a mocha. One guy, but most days you eat quietly. You sit in your hole, back against the frozen earth, and try to make peace with whatever flavor the army gods have dealt today. You chew slowly, watching snow settle on the edges of your helmet, thinking about your mom's cooking. Lasagna, chicken dumplings, pie. You'd sell your rifle for pie. There's nothing else. Sea rations came in 12 menu. Every once in a while, a care package arrives from home, if the mail system survives the weather and the chaos. You tear it open with the same desperation you'd reserve for a winning lottery ticket. Inside, cookies, hard as bullets but still cookies, jerky, sweet, and smoky. Maybe even a tin of coffee or a tiny bottle of something not exactly regulation. To strap cans to tank engines or rest them inside. One time, someone's aunt sent an entire fruitcake, dense, indestructible, and filled with what might be real fruit. You all took turns gnawing on it like cavemen discovering carbs. Partly, you can afford to let a little music in. You finish the meal with alongside the entree tin came the accessory packet. This included toilet paper, a postage stamp sign. Your buddy nudges you and shares a cracker smeared with peanut butter from his ration. It's almost good. The texture's weird, half powder, half glue, but the salt and fat are just what your brain craves. For a few moments, you both chew and stare at the icy horizon, not speaking. There's nothing to say. The peanut butter speaks for itself. You almost cried. Then again, the fruit cocktail often came with a film of metallic aftertaste, like it had been preserved with spite. Frozen. Again. Gravel, ice, and the coffee. You never skip the coffee. Powdered, bitter, more mood stabilizer than beverage. You mix it with lukewarm water in your canteen cup, stir with a stick, and sip it like it's a $5 latte. It wakes you just enough to remember how tired you are. You sigh. That's the best you can hope for today. Not woken by birdsong or sunshine, but by your stomach, which is now organizing protests in your rib cage, to the base kitchen, and sent him a recipe for the official Army meatloaf. You rummage through your pack. The snow's coming down harder now, blanketing everything in cold silence. You brush it off your mess kit and stack your trash, careful not to leave a trace. Foxholes don't need smells. You bury the rest, pack up, and get ready to move. Somewhere else, somewhere not quite as cold maybe, but probably not Dot. You sling your rifle over your shoulder and stand up, boots cracking through frost. Want more sea ration down? You're walking again, because that's what you do. Through mud, snow, sand, sometimes ankle-deep water. Boots squelching with every tired step, shoulders aching beneath your gear. And in your pack, somewhere between the spare socks and the mystery stain on your poncho, sits a K-ration. Or two, if you're lucky. But most days, you eat quietly. You sit in your hole, back against the frozen earth, and tried K-rations are your everyday, all-purpose, calorie-packed companions. They're like that one friend who always shows up when nobody else does. Reliable. A little boring, often disappointing, but necessary. Designed for mobility, meant for short missions, and packed like a high-stakes lunchbox, the box is slim, cardboard, the size of a paperback novel. Each day's rations are divided into 3 meals: breakfast, dinner, supper, though calling them meals is generous. You open the breakfast pack, and inside, canned ham and eggs, a packet of crackers, instant coffee, 4 sugar cubes, a D-bar chocolate block, and, you smile, chewing gum. Rest them inside helmet. One time, someone's aunt sent an entire fruitcake, dense, indestructible, and filled with what might be real fruit. You all took turns gnawing on it like cavemen discovering carbs. You start with the ham and eggs, which look suspiciously like cat food and smell only marginally better. You use your P38 to pry the lid off, and a soft plop greets you. It's gelatinous, beige, and trembling in the cold. Still, You eat it, alternating bites with sips of lukewarm coffee you stirred with the same spoon you used for the ham. Because hygiene is more of a vibe out here. You both chew and stare at the icy horizon. The crackers are better. Stale, dry, but satisfyingly crunchy. You spread on a smear of processed cheese from a tiny tin. It smells like a mix of foot and miracle. But it's salty. It coats your mouth. And it doesn't taste like despair. That's a win. And the coffee. You never skip the coffee. Powdered, bitter, more mood stabilizer than beverage. Historians still argue whether the K ration was innovative or idiotic. It was designed for paratroopers and mobile units. Light, portable, efficient. But as the war stretched on, these temporary rations became all too permanent. Soldiers ate them for weeks on end, and their bodies didn't love it. Constipation became a frequent quirky tidbit. The K ration came with 4 cigarettes per meal. That's 12 a day. The Army really wanted you calm, if not exactly healthy. Also included a small packet of toilet paper, again, more like napkin confetti, and a wooden spoon that broke if you looked at it wrong. You chew the D-bar. It's not the kind of chocolate you dream about. It's a high-fat, high-calorie block designed not to melt under pressure, which means it also refuses to melt in your mouth. You gnaw at it like a squirrel, eventually giving up and sucking on the chunk like a piece of survival gravel. Through mud, snow, sand, sometimes ankle-deep water, boots squelching with every tired step, shoulders aching beneath your gear. And in your pack, somewhere between the spare socks and the mystery stain on your poncho, sits a K ration. Or 2, if you're lucky. But most days, you eat quietly. You sit in your hole. The dinner box has a meat and beans can, another cracker pack, more coffee, and an orange-flavored drink powder that fizzes if you're lucky and clumps if you're not. You mix it with your canteen water. It tastes like regret with citrus notes, but at least it's not just water. Designed for mobility, meant for short missions, and packed like a high-stakes lunchbox, these rations are what the box is slim, cardboard, the size of a paperback novel. Each day's rations are divided into 3 meals: breakfast, dinner, supper, though calling them meals is generous. You open the breakfast pack, and inside, canned ham and eggs, a packet of crackers, instant coffee, 4 sugar cubes, a D-bar chocolate block, and some soldiers tried combining the drink powder with snow to make a slushie. It sounded clever until someone got mild frostbite from eating too many snowsickles. Still, you try it anyway, cautiously, and it's not bad. Cold, at least. And it makes you forget, just for a second, that your socks are soaking through again. Your P-38 to pry the lid off, the K ration's biggest crime wasn't the taste. It was the monotony. Same 3 boxes, same meals, day after day. You'd start fantasizing about things you never liked before: boiled cabbage, liver, meatloaf with raisins. Swapping rations became an art form. I'll trade you my cheese tin for your fruit bar. Throw in your drink powder and it's a deal. Whole underground economies formed around those cardboard boxes. Guys with extra rations could become local kings. And if someone had a stash of lemon powder, that man could start a nation. Occasionally, you get creative. Crumble the crackers into the beans, melt the D-bar in coffee, sprinkle